Hardest challenge was to wake up on July 17th, 2007, with the law enforcement at your door and letting you know that someone was trying to break into your home. And then you go to investigate, what the cause or what's happening. And you walk right out into your front door, and immediately you're just swarmed by federal agents, DEA, FBI. Matt, there was even IRS agents that had guns. I didn't even know the IRS carried guns. That was the worst day of my life. I remember it like it was yesterday, 16 years ago.
Like Beyonce, both and in. My new friend Ron, Naulls. Man, Ron, this is gonna be awesome. We just got started chatting for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and I'm already been in tears hearing some of your story. It's such a fascinating, amazing story from the heights and the depths. And we're gonna go with both of them. Just welcome to the show. It's great to meet you today, Ron, and see you. Welcome.
A pleasure. The pleasure's all mine, Matt. Thank you for the invitation. I'm so excited.
Yeah. I am excited to dive into this, and our listeners can go and check the show notes and see all about your accomplishments and see practicing attorney and everything that you've achieved, and they can go to LinkedIn for that. Well, what's the personal thing that we might know? What are 3 things about Mr. Ron Naulls that will give us our audience an introduction into you?
I love God, number one. Give glory to Him and His love. So number one. Number two, I have 7 kids, 6 girls, 1 boy, and it was not planned. So that's always the did you plan? We just got blessed with 7 kids. The last but not least, I'm a convicted felon. And I practice law. Through the grace of God, there's not too many attorneys that have a criminal conviction, and mine being on the federal level, and then get your bar license right after being convicted for a felony. So those are 3 things about me.
Holy cannoli. Okay. We teed it up, and I think our audience is on the edge of their seat right now. Convicted felon, 7 kids, love God. The convicted, all of those can have an asterisk. All of those are amazing and got me on the edge of the seat. Let's go dive straight in. What's the hardest challenge that you've ever endured or overcome? Take us back and set the frame for us, please. And we're all ears, Ron.
Hardest challenge was to wake up on July 17th, 2007, with the law enforcement at your door and letting you know that someone was trying to break into your home. And then you go to investigate, what the cause or what's happening. And you walk right out into your front door, and immediately you're just swarmed by federal agents, DEA, FBI. Matt, there was even IRS agents that had guns. I didn't even know the IRS carried guns. That was the worst day of my life. I remember it like it was yesterday, 16 years ago. And we just had that anniversary on July 17th of this year. And that's the lowest point of my life, sitting in the back of the police car, about to be carted away to the Bureau of Prisons in downtown Los Angeles for manufacturing, distributing, conspiracy, and maintaining an establishment from a legal medical marijuana dispensary in Corona, California.
What? A legal dispensary, and you open the door, and that tragic nightmare of no one, this doesn't happen in real life. It is on your doorstep. Take us into that moment, please, of shock and just what happened at that moment when you opened the door. What did you see and feel, hear?
First, I was like, okay, I'm obviously a dispensary owner and someone's trying to break into my home. So I'm thinking that they probably thought I had a bunch of weed at my house or a bunch of
Yeah.
cash because this was a cash based business. So I'm scared. My family back then, it was 3 kids and the wife. Um, who's trying to break into my home? Um, get dressed, go downstairs. The a lady officer said, "Can you come out and identify this individual?" And knowing in my legal experience, that was a way to get me across the front door threshold, to get outside of the home, to satisfy the arrest warrant. And as soon as I crossed that threshold at my front door, get down, get down, get down, guns pointing at me. I'm shocked and frightened, like, got these assault rifles all pointing at me, and I'm being, pushed and forced to the ground. Um, and I'm sitting there thinking, Matt, I'm not the burglar. Why are you, what the heck is going on? And then I'm hearing helicopters and dogs, and then hands being placed behind my back, and I'm being patted down, and they raise me to my feet, and the next thing I know, I just see like helicopters and all these cars swarming in on our block, and just a whole bunch of police activity. And I'm still trying to figure out, like, what the heck is going on? Did they mistake me for the robber or something? And it wasn't until I was being led to the police car, that the investigating officers, "What's the code to the safe?" And then I can hear over the radio, like, we're at the facility, and we're inside, and it's safe. And I'm like, and then it dawned on me, we're being raided by the feds.
Wow. Man. So you're hearing these things, you're in shock, you're in the back of a car, you're cuffed, I imagine,
Mm-hmm.
and there are guns everywhere. Where is your wife and your kids? Can you see them? Can you hear them? What's happening there at this moment?
I, I couldn't see my wife or my kids. They were in the home. My kids were sleeping. And Matt, this is one day after my third daughter's birthday. Her birthday is on July 16th. The kids had just returned the previous day from Waterworld out in San Pedro. I mean, imagine 3 little kids going to Waterworld in the middle of the summer, and they're just deadbeat exhausted. So they're sound asleep. My wife was the one that nudged me to go to the door because she heard the police, knocking. So she's like, "Ronnie, there's a cops at the door. They're saying someone's trying to break in the home." I'm a little, disoriented. And, so I'm like, okay, let me, put my slippers on and head downstairs. And it just happened so quickly, so fast, that the next thing I know, I'm in the back of a police squad car. And I'm looking around, and all these neighbors, Matt, that have never been outside before, because this is a totally quiet street. Everyone's walking their dogs and everyone's jogging. All these looky-loos just come out of nowhere. But thank goodness my next
Yeah.
door neighbor, she somehow got close to the back of the police car, and she's like, "Ronnie, are you okay? Is there anything I can do?" And I was like, "Just, can you call my mom? Because I don't know if I don't know if I'm going to see my wife. I don't know if I don't know what's going on. Please just call my mom." And she said, "Okay, I'll call your mom." And I sat in the back of the police car, and then that's when another officer came up to me and said, "Well, what's the code to the safe in the house?" Because we had a safe in the house as well. And I said, I recall, as a medical cannabis patient, you're taught these things and how to interact with law enforcement. And just, I choose to remain silent, exercising, my Fifth Amendment rights. And the cop was like, "All right, we'll just break it then. You just tear up your house even more than it is right now." And I'm like, goodness gracious, like, they're already tearing up the house. So, okay, so I just gave them the code to the safe. And then that's when another one over the radio is talking about, "Well, we're at the dispensary and we need the code to the safe there." And I just gave them the code to the safe there. And then I'm hearing over the radio inside the car that they're raiding my employees and that they're being rounded up as well. So all of this is going on. I'm just sitting in the back seat of the car, like, I can't believe what is happening. This is just why. And yeah, I just sat there. And then after the raid was, completed, or they had to finish their, tearing up
Yeah.
the home, there was two investigators that just started taking me to LA, from Corona to LA. And that's about, a couple hour drive. It's not, short, without traffic, you could probably get to Corona in LA, if you're in fast track, maybe an hour, maybe, 40 minutes to an hour. But when you're in, this was 6 a.m. in the morning. They say that the feds and law enforcement, they hit you by surprise early in the morning. So this was around, 5 or 6 in the morning when they raided us. And after about maybe an hour or so, that's when they started driving me down to the Bureau of Prisons in downtown LA. They call it Twin Towers.
Huh. Okay. Okay. So you're getting driven down there at the Twin Towers. You hear your house is getting torn up. Your business is getting torn up. Your employees are being dragged out of their homes as well. We can only assume. You've got someone who's a friend, neighbor, calling your mom. So that's happening. And the whole world is upside down in utter chaos and confusion right now. And what was that ride like? Going from your home to the prison, like what were you thinking, and just what was that experience?
It was surreal because the DEA was actually like asking me questions like, "Well, you were surprised, huh?" And I'm like, "Oh, how do I respond to
Like
that?"
playfully
I'm just,
asking you questions? I mean,
and then,
what?
and a note to your listeners: you have the right to remain silent. So when you're in the squad car and the police are jabbering their jaws to you, just keep it quiet, because all of that they can use against you, of course. So, but me, I was 27 at the time. I knew my rights, knew the laws, but I felt I didn't do anything wrong. So I felt free to talk. So it was, we scared you, huh? You didn't think we surprised you, huh? And I'm like, I didn't know how to respond to that. And then another was, what was the all those jars in your office? One of them said GOP, and a reference to the grand old party. And I'm like, no, that's not, because it was something that I wrote on the top of the jars, and it's actually a particular type of cannabis strain, and it's the acronym is GDP, but I guess my O or my D on that label looked like an O. So he's like, "What's the GOP?" And I'm like, "Where did you get? What do you mean?" And he's like, "Oh, in one of your drawers, you had a jar that said GOP on it. Is that like some reference to the Republican Party?" Like, no, that's actually a cannabis strain called Granddaddy Purple. My
Hmm.
D maybe looks like an O, but that's a certain strain that helps with people that have pain, and they need to, if they're a cancer patient and they can't eat, that's a really good medicinal strain to alleviate those types of symptoms. And the DA was kind of looking at me like, like, you're just a street pharmacist. He didn't say that, Matt, but I could tell that they're trained for drugs and law enforcement. So there's no medicinal use whatsoever under the federal law. So the DEA during that time is like, there's no medicinal use whatsoever. You're just a drug dealer. You're just a street pharmacist. And that's the way we're going to treat you. And that's essentially, how they treated me. It was just like I was just, some random drug dealer. And I felt as if it was more of that attitude and approach because me as a minority. I'm
Ah,
sure the DEA deals with a lot of drugs and minorities, and they may have their preconceived notions. And so it was like, man, you're just another black guy that's slinging drugs. And we're just
man.
picking off another one.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, so take us to the jail. You get there, you get processed, and what happens next? Do you get to call your attorney? I mean, are you just now? What happens there?
So I get downtown to the Bureau of Prisons, and I had to be processed and fingerprinted and what have you. And Matt, I was arrested 10 years prior in my teenage years. Was more of that in the book and another book. But anyways, long story short, I'd been through the criminal justice system before. And
Hmm.
so right when I got into the Bureau of Prisons and I'm fingerprinting and everything, there's just something that clicked in my head that let me know like that I have to behave or act in a certain way. I can't be this upstanding businessman in the Bureau of Prisons. And so
Okay.
right when I walked in, you're hearing those clanky noises of metal against metal, and you're in this environment where you're housed with other criminals. Um, I couldn't say that, oh, I ran a medical marijuana dispensary and it was legal and that's why I was arrested. It was, more or less like I was, slanging pounds and, they finally caught up with me, So that way I don't have this aura of like, oh, well, you're, not a real criminal and you get treated differently in the prison system. And so knowing the unwritten rules in a jail or prison environment.
Okay.
For example, that all races are separated. So I was, labeled, black. So I was housed with other black inmates,
Okay.
and that's how they control, the racial segregation in the prison. So that was okay. If I'm going to be housed with blacks in Los Angeles, most of them are gang members. And so, I know they're going to ask me, are you blood or Crip? And so all of this was just going through my head like, okay, I don't know how long I'm going to be here, Matt. I don't
Yeah.
know, how, who knows? And so it was just something that I just had to like get into that mindset of being a black prisoner and in downtown Los Angeles, and who knows how long I'm going to be here. So I'm just going to fake it till I make it.
Wow. Okay, so you, wow, all of this is very interesting. All the stuff that's going on in the mind when you're upstanding business owner running a legit business, and all of a sudden you're now in prison, and you've got to morph into whoever you've got to morph into to survive. And at what point do you get a chance to talk to a lawyer or talk to your wife? What?
Great questions. So once you get into the Bureau of Prisons, you're fingerprinted, what have you. Then they put you in a common cell until they process all the paperwork. Then you get housed in your bunk. And once I got housed in my bunk and I'm with my race, then I was allowed to make a phone call. And once I made a phone call, it was to my mom. And man, because I couldn't call the house because no one was answering when I called the house. And so I assumed, of course, my wife must be gone. So I called my mom, was thankfully able to get in touch with her. And she said, your wife was arrested. She was arrested for child endangerment. And they wouldn't let us take the grandkids because of, some something on my parents' DMV record that happened when they were teenagers. Because way back when you could get a driver's license when you were a teenager, and there was some error that was on my parents' driver's record that kept them from getting their grandkids. And so that's another long story that
Huh?
once that was straightened out, then they were able to qualify to get the grandkids. But because of that, Matt, they were taken straight to Child Protective Services. And so my mom was like, letting me know like what they were doing to try to get the kids, and they couldn't. And then they were trying to figure out how to bail out my wife because she was being housed by the Corona Police Department for child endangerment. And then what they could do to try to bond me out, because in the federal system there is no bail, it's bond. And for your listeners, bond is you have to put up real estate property to be released from custody with the Federal Bureau of Prisons. And that
Yeah.
is not a short process where you can go to bail bondsman and he's like, give me some money and I'll put up the rest. Not on a bond, a federal bond. That's go and find a property, that you own or your family member owns, and have it appraised, and then take that appraisal down to the federal clerk's office, and that
Okay.
appraisal amount has to be at or above the bond set by the United States judge, if you will. So my
Okay.
bond was 300, and I want to say, big thing off the top of my head, I think it was $350 or $350,000. So thank goodness, because we couldn't use any of our properties, Matt, because they were being forfeited. We had
What?
we
You?
had 4 homes, and the federal government said those homes can't be used for your bond because they were acquired, or they were the funds were used from the cannabis business, and so they are going to be forfeited. So you can't use those properties, including our own home residence, which we bought well before the cannabis business was even open. So couldn't use any of our properties. So I asked my mom if she would put her property up for bond. She went and got it appraised and took it down to the federal court's clerk, and was able to secure a bond to bond me out of the Bureau of Prisons. But that process, Matt, alone took, I want to say, a little over 2 weeks. And so it
Yeah.
was,
Wow.
okay, so now I got to sit here for 2 weeks and fake it till I make it, cross my fingers.
Yeah. What? So if we could stay in that moment before we, come out of it and kind of go forward, what was that first 2 weeks like? Waiting through all that. Just how did you survive? How did you make it in
Man,
that time?
so I'll tell you a story, and it's in the book, and the listeners can get more details on it. And so there was news coverage about the raid, and so the fellow prisoners found out who I was, and one of the prisoners that was there at the time, let's just say he had some power struggles or some authority issues in prison. Because you know what, in prison they can figure out real quick who's a punk, or who's, I'll excuse my friend, but who's a bitch, and who we're gonna take food from, or who we're gonna take commissary from, or who we're gonna who's using phone privileges so much, because phone privileges is currency in prison. So it's like, if you're on the
Okay.
phone, obviously you got some money. So someone was watching me talking on the phone, and there was news coverage. And so my cellmate, we call him Celly in prison, he's
Okay.
like, oh, so and so knows who you really are, and he's going to call you out, and he's got a problem with you, and he's going to call you out because he wants to up his rank in the prison amongst the blacks.
Okay.
And so let's
Wow.
just say that there was a scuffle, and the lucky we didn't get, I wasn't caught in that scuffle by the Bureau of Prisons guards. They heard, because it was in our cell when I got into the scuffle with this other prisoner. And let's just say I walked out prison a week or so later, black eye, and a few other scuff marks and what have you, but
Okay.
we survived.
Oh, goodness. Wow. Okay. I'm still, I mean, this is surreal to hear the story. It's surreal. I know you said it was surreal living it. I mean, just to hear this, that you're running a legit business and everything is taken away. And I'm just shocked, still shocked to hear it. Let's move forward. What happens next? It's important to share today, Ron.
What
Love to
happens next
keep
was
moving.
for me to really ground myself in my faith, and that was, God, why did this happen? Like, what am I supposed to do? I trust you, I love you, I believe you, but this does not make any sense. You're really, really questioning my trust and faith in you. um, and that's when and this was in prison when I was praying, and God was like, no man can hurt you. You know, you need to fear me, not fear no man. And if you trust me, and if you love me, eh, I will guide you through this. And so that was, to me, an ultimate test of my faith. and how much I trust God, how much I love God, how much I want to fight for my family, how much I wanted to fight for my freedom. And what else did I have to lose? So I said, you know what? I'm questioning you, God, because God allows us to question him. And so I said, this is a huge question, but you know what? I'm going to fight for my freedom. I'm going to fight for my family. I'm going to fight for my faith. And man, I would never ever wish that circumstance away from happening, because before we got on this recording, it refined me. It was that pruning that God does to you that
Okay.
makes you a completely different person, or to change. And when people say, oh, I've changed, or God has made me a much better person, it's like, you don't really understand the depths of those statements until you've gone through it yourself and actually experienced it. And then you're like, yeah, I changed because of that situation. I was refined because of that situation. I was pruned because of that situation. And thank God for that raid, because I wouldn't be here today as a practicing attorney without that. Guarantee, Matt. Guarantee.
Wow.
I probably wouldn't be married. I wouldn't have 7 kids. Me and my wife would be divorced. I mean, there's so much shoulda, coulda, woulda that could have happened had that business thrived and survived. And, who knows? I wouldn't be where I am today.
You're saying that you're grateful for this hardest, most impossible, challenging scenario. There's gratitude in the hardest thing that you've ever had to endure and overcome.
They say
Wow.
God is the ultimate comedian. Because when you look back on the whole situation, you're like Chris Rock. That is hilarious. And how you can, because in retrospect, you're
Okay.
like, how, why, and you just don't understand. But then when you get to the other side, as a refined person, as that pruned person, as the character that's built up,
Mhm.
he puts you through those man, the fire, and the struggles and the strife to bring out the ultimate character and your ultimate purpose in life. And yeah, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Wow. Well, but without going any further, let's just what's the name of your book and where do we get a copy of it? Because I'm going to go and get one right now. what What's the name of it? Where do we find it?
Compassion, consequences, and criminal perseverance. Your listeners can get a free copy. They can download a free copy today if they go to ronnaulls.com/book. They can download a free copy. Otherwise, it's on Amazon, and you can pick up your copy there as well.
Wow, Ron Naulls, Ron Ronnaulls, Ron
Yes.
Naulls.
Nancy, Apple, Umbrella, Larry, Sam.com/book. And where does that title come from? Because
Yeah.
there's a reason behind that title. Well, compassion, Matt, comes from the Compassionate Use Act, the law that was passed in 1996 in California, which is the main driver around legalization today. Without the Compassionate Use Act, we would not have a cannabis industry. Mind you, the term marijuana is the slang word for cannabis, so I'm trying to cut that word out of my vocabulary and use the real word, cannabis.
Okay.
We would not have the industry where it is today without the Compassionate Use Act of 1996. So it's imperative that I include the word compassion in this book. Um, consequences consequences come from opening a dispensary, a compassion, being compassionate and trying to provide medical cannabis to patients. and the consequences that came because of that. And then the criminal perseverance, and that's, persevering as a criminal for my family, for my freedom. And wow, what happens when you buckle down and you just persevere as a criminal. And it's important that I say as a criminal, because everyone always looks down on the criminal. Everyone always looks down on the, like you're the bad person. They don't realize there's a ton of people that used to be criminals that changed their lives around completely. And so that's one aspect that I want to call out, especially for minority folks. Don't have your labels define you. Have your labels refine you.
It's amazing. Thank you. Somewhere on this journey and this conversation, it's shocking to hear this. And I'm on Amazon. I just ordered the book right now. It's going to be here on Saturday. So this is amazing to get a copy of this book. And Ron just said, if you didn't hear it, listeners, go to ronnaulls.com and get a copy of the book, an e-copy of the book. He'll get it to you now. So you can get it now and start reading it now. I think this is going to be one of those books.
Book. Because I don't want to go to Ron Naulls like, where's the book? Where's the book? So /book.
/book. I mean, this is the kind of book I feel I'm going to get into it and like devour it in like 1 or 2 sittings max. This is fascinating. I keep waiting for this is like a dream or a nightmare. Like what? Because it's legal. You have a legal license and you run a legal dispensary, and then all of this stuff. I mean, somewhere there's a state and there's a federal clash, but you're not seeing that. You're the human, and all the human families that work with you are getting hit with this. This is. I cannot wait to read about this in the book. So let's leave some of that for the audience in the book, and let's move forward to right now. What is it that's your purpose, your mission now, and that keeps you going and excites you right now, Ron?
Wow, my purpose, my mission is to have this industry, and for one, that this plant helps so many people from a medical standpoint, that we've been conditioned so long by our own government that you're bad, and this plant has no medical benefits whatsoever. And yet there's maybe countless, even multiple references and information available that completely despises the notion that there's no medical benefits of cannabis. So that's first and foremost for cancer patients, for folks that have Crohn's disease, depression, mental health, the U.S. veterans that speak highly of the use of cannabis from PTSD. And so that, to me, is to change the mindset that we've been conditioned that this is bad, it's a drug, there's no medical use whatsoever, to help folks be educated about the real benefits of cannabis, first and foremost. Second, that this is not an industry that folks can just get in and do a cash grab, if you will, and exploit this plant. So as an attorney, my purpose and mission is to ensure that this plant is not exploited, whether it be businesses, the black market, and just ensuring that this plant is available to the masses, in a framework that allows it to be distributed legally, because that is going to impact globally, which is already happening today. To bring it from the underground, bring it from the recesses of folks, and the criminality that's been attached to it for so long, And like alcohol, to me, this is like prohibition, repeating itself over and over again, where we were so
Mm-hmm.
conditioned against alcohol, and it was outlawed. And then one day the switch was flipped, and alcohol became legal. It became a viable business, and now it's a thriving industry. So the same for cannabis, but to make sure that it's not exploited, and that it reaches that plateau as a legitimate, useful plant that leads to other explorations and understandings, and other plant medicines that we don't have any information or have any source of research about. Like, for example, like mushrooms. There's so much research now going into psychedelics and psilocybin, which is mushrooms, states that have legalized mushrooms right now because of the medicinal benefits. And so that is just opening the door for like-minded individuals to really know what is being, told to us, and actually going out and getting, the real information, the real research, and actually being able to contribute. Because there's so many people that could contribute, but their mindset and how they're fashioned, and what they've been conditioned, they completely turn off. And so my hope is to turn them on.
Yeah. And what's fascinating about all this, amongst other things, is I don't know if there's a single study. Show me a study in the world somewhere where there's actually positive benefits to alcohol. Where is that? This drink a glass of wine a day is good for your heart. There are a number of studies that refute that BS. So tell me where there's good in alcohol, right? And where there's actual negative on all these things, the Crohn's and the cancer patients. And I'm with you on this, and I'm an advocate for what you're talking about as well. And everything you've shared, I've agreed with, and I'm not even understood the first part, and I'm still baffled that this could happen. And now, so I'd love to go on this as much as we can talk about it. I'm sure it's in the book. Convicted felon. Point number 3, we started. Convicted felon, and you're an
Yes.
attorney. How do you become an attorney when you're a convicted felon? And by the way, I know that may say convicted felon on paper. I still am having trouble understanding how you've done anything wrong, and calling you a criminal. I don't even think that doesn't even make sense to me to call you criminal. But tell me how a convicted felon got his law license. How did that even happen?
Great question, Matt. So one of the things that I'm so blessed about is the people that I had around me during that time. There was so much temptation, Matt, because this was a criminal element, and you're dealing with individuals that, they don't see the benefits, they see the profits. And so there was so much temptation in this business, cash-based business. But man, it just, my faith, I give glory to him in that I put people around me that could help me, build me up, and trust and relationships. And that, Matt, is the number one thing, the reason why I'm an attorney today, because we were compliant, we followed the laws, we did not subvert the state laws. When it came to tracking cannabis, we tracked cannabis. When it came to ensuring that we weren't distributing to the black market, we were checking everyone's recommendation and making sure that they were referred by a doctor and that their recommendations didn't expire. We not only dotted the J's and crossed the T's, we dotted the I's as well. And because of that, the conviction that I got was for filing a false tax return. Under IRS Section 280E, it says that you cannot take a business deduction for anything that's illegal under the Controlled Substances Act, which is our federal law, war on drugs. I'm sure you all heard of that. And marijuana is a Schedule 1, cannabis is a Schedule 1 drug. No medicinal benefits whatsoever. Now, we had professional CPAs that did our taxes, but the IRS, they have volumes of code that can line a 20-story skyscraper. Easy. So,
Yeah.
in essence, these IRS agents, they found something that we took a business deduction on that we weren't supposed to under IRS Section 280E. And here was the kicker. We'll dismiss the four charges that we're charging you with, which each charge was 10 years, Matt. Distribution, manufacturing, maintaining an establishment, and conspiracy. 10 years each, 40 years. If you plead to filing a false tax return, it's a felony, and you'll get a huge fine and house arrest. And I was in law school at the time, and me and my wife had a discussion of, if I do this, I could never be an attorney. I could never become a lawyer, because under the state bar, moral character, moral turpitude is, they scrutinize that heavily. And filing a false tax return hits in the essence of moral turpitude. So I prayed to God, and I'm like, you know what? You got me this far, and I may never be an attorney. And so, but I want to be with my family. I want to be free. I don't want to fight the federal government for a law, because you can't bring into court, by the way, Matt, that you were state sanctioned, you were legal, all of that. The federal government put in a motion to suppress all of that evidence, because you
What?
can't bring that as evidence in a trial. So I was guaranteed to lose, Matt, against the federal government. They pretty much said, you can't bring up state law at all. We've already got a motion, and there's no jury nullification. So you can't be like, hey, jury, what do you think about cannabis? And if you're, I tried every single angle. And there's still people serving time in federal prison for marijuana or cannabis today. So I bit the bullet. I said, I want to be with my family. I want to see my kids graduate. I want to go to their softball games. I want to go to their cheerleading. I want to be there for my wife and kids. And if I got to take a criminal conviction to do it, so be it, because I can't beat them if I go to trial. And so I signed the letter for the plea agreement in 2010, Matt, and I was a convicted felon. They put the ankle bracelet on me for 6 months, and I was a convicted felon at that point. And then fast forward to 2018, 2019. I had already graduated from law school in 2014. I passed the bar exam in 2016, and I didn't plan on applying for my law license, because, like, why waste time? But it was my oldest daughter.
Yeah.
She's like, Dad, no one would pass up, the circumstance and the situation that you're in. And you always taught us to never, give up when we start something. I'm like, oh man, these dang kids, they watch you and they eat up every single thing that you say. So I'm like, okay, you know what? Let me go ahead and apply for my law license. The first time that I went for my law license in 2016, this was before cannabis was legal in the state of California for adult and recreation use. I go up in front of the moral character hearing, and it's, how could you do that to your family? How could you put your family at such risk? Another moral character attorney, you sold dope. You thought you can get away with it. So it was.
But you can't say that I had a legal dispensary at this moment. You cannot say that.
I didn't want to push the folks that were making the decision on whether or not I can get a law license, Matt. These are attorneys, and they already had their mind made up. And so I wasn't going to make them even more think like, oh, no, you're definitely not getting your license. If you're going to sit up here and try to defend yourself, like, do you know what decision we have here in front of us? Whether or not you can become a lawyer. So I took all of the assaults and the persecution and you're wrong. And I left that meeting, Matt, and I was crying my eyes out. I never felt so much. I felt like shit. Like, why did you make me come here, Lord? Why did you put me in this situation? Why did you make me go up there in front of all those people and just get ridiculed? And he said, because I have a purpose for you. I said, you know what? I don't know what the purpose is, but I'm not feeling it so far. 2 years later, cannabis is legal in the state of California. Prop 64 overwhelmingly passes. I'm due for another hearing because I reapplied for my license after they denied me the first time. I go up a second time, Matt. The same person that interviewed me 2 years ago says to me when I walk in, oh, you kind of look like my grandson. And I'm looking and I'm like, you don't remember what you said to me 2 years ago, huh? I didn't say that, but I'm thinking in my mind, like, he got to remember me, because they have my whole file. I know they looked at it from, from 2 years ago when they had a discussion with me on my moral character. And another attorney, a moral character attorney, says, "So what are you going to do when you get your law license?" And I'm like, sitting there in the chair, like, did she just say when I get my law license? Like, I can't believe what I just heard. Like, Matt, that to me was God saying, "Yeah, you're getting your license." And it
Yeah.
was, we need more people on you. We need more people like you on the bar. You followed the law. You did everything you were supposed to do, and yeah, as an advocate. And I was just amazed at the complete 360 that had occurred in that room. And I don't know if it was because of the overwhelming, vote for Prop 64 and the legalization of adult recreation cannabis, because medical cannabis is legal in the state for decades. So I don't know if it was the difference in opinion, but man, I got my law license because I, from day one, followed the law. I, I did not succumb to venality, and temptation. And man, I give him glory for all of that, Matt, because it was all there. It was all there. And had I had, the one slip in my character, and you know what, man, who's going to know? Or, everyone else is doing it. And that would have destroyed my future ability to get a law license.
Wow. You grinned and you bared it humbly. And wow, you let your ego go way down and you didn't even touch it. You just left yourself in your faith and you did what you had to. And now, wow, that's such an amazing story. Before we even finish our discussion today, we're going to come back and we're going to have another discussion. We're going to have you on the show again, and we're going to talk about this again, because this is such an amazing story, Ron. I hate to cut it short, and at the same time, there's so much more to share, and we're going to give our listeners something great the next time we do this too. So let's. I didn't even get to. It sounds like, if I'm reading the numbers correctly, that you were in the prison or the system for more than 2 years, from July 17th, 2007 until 2010. I, I can't even imagine it. Just one question here. When did you get the chance to see your wife, your kids, and how did your relationship in that time? What can you give us a glimpse
Yeah.
of
So
that time, please?
I was
Wow.
bonded out once my mom's house was appraised. So I was able to get
Yes.
bonded out. And me and my wife were about to get a divorce. She is like, our kids are gone because of you. And Matt, we went to family law court, and our kids had their own attorney. My wife had an attorney, and I'm in the family law court, and I'm sitting there before the hearing. I'm like, man, I'm about to go to prison, and my kids are in CPS. My wife is about to we're about to get a divorce. So, you know what? Like, this, man, I just give up. I just completely give up. And so we went into the family law court, and we were sworn in. And the first thing the judge says is, you know what? The family law judge, I don't see any reason to keep these kids in child protective services if this was a legal marijuana dispensary. And I did a
Finally,
double take.
reason, logic. Finally.
I'm like, what? And the social worker was like, well, drugs and the kids and da da da, and the family law judge was like, but it was legal, and there was no other child protective services calls to the house. We were good parents. We were doing, a business. And so give me one reason why I should keep these kids in protective services, as opposed to them going home to their parents. And social worker couldn't, Matt. She couldn't say, like, I was a convicted felon or this, because I wasn't convicted by that time. I was still going through the federal, system, the criminal justice system. So I wasn't convicted by then. Did everything as an upstanding citizen up until that point with the business, raising our kids and what have you. And yeah, we weren't the parents that Child Protective Services was coming into, a week before, the month prior, like they have a long list of like calls to Child Protective Services. No, Your Honor, we never, not even a police called to our house. And he released our kids back to us after being in Child Protective Services. I want to say they were with Child Protective Services for a little over a month. And that is a record in CPS. Normally, you do not get your kids back for at least a year once they're in CPS custody. And that one event, Matt, was pivotal for me and my wife's marriage to grow and repair and just continue, as a family unit, from that one court hearing.
Goodness. Okay. So listeners, you know how to get a copy of the book. RonNaulls.com/book. You can get the free e-copy now, or if you don't want to do the e-copy, you want to get the hard copy, which I just got on Amazon, go to Amazon and get that yourself right now. Or if you have the patience, just message me and I will buy and send a copy to the first 50 guests or listeners that message me, because this story has to be shared. It has to be known. This is amazing. Thank you for sharing this. I don't want to stop. And I feel that it's time for us to go to the wrap up lightning round. So ding, ding, ding. Okay, Ron. So we're gonna do a very, very gentle segue or abrupt segue to the lightning round. So to start things, when you hear the term eternal optimist, what does eternal optimist mean to you?
That means beyond my living presence here on earth. If I'm the model of an optimist, now I look at any situation and I don't look at the bad things, or I don't look at, oh, woe is me. I look at what's the opportunity here, what's the learning thing here, but that knowledge is eternal, Matt, because it's passed on to other generations because of me as an example, me being a light. So that to me is the eternal optimist, not just an optimist with me and myself or being selfish. To be eternal optimist, it's what values, what character, what light are you shining and reverberating to those around you so that they can be optimists, so that when you're long gone, you're the eternal optimist.
Absolutely fantastic answer. Thank you. Thank you. Let's go to, if there is a book or two, if there is a book or maybe two that have inspired or influenced or served you in some way in your life that you'd like to share, what might be one or two books that you can recommend to us?
Rick Warren's A Purpose-Driven Life.
Okay.
And Confessions of a Prayer Slacker. I don't recall the author's name, but that book was phenomenal. And I'm slapping myself so hard because had you primed me with this question beforehand, I would have the author's name. But Confessions of a Prayer Slacker was what helped me, like, okay, here's another person that I can identify with, because I wasn't really praying every day and, always, trying to raise my spiritual level, if you will, or my spiritual game. And that book, like, whoo. And then The Purpose-Driven Life, Rick Warren, it just gets to the essence of why we're here. And when you're going through that struggle and strife, man, The Purpose-Driven Life was that light through that darkness journey that I was going through. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Confessions of a Prayer Slacker and Purpose-Driven Life. Thank you for that. Let's go to music. If there is a song or a type of music that inspires you or just fills your cup, what might be your song or your music, Ron?
I love hip hop. I'm a big hip hop fan. Jay-Z, put me where on God's green earth, I triple my worth. Like, I could sell water to a whale. Like when you think of things like that, you're just like, I'm a former. I still, like to as an athlete, just work out and stay fit. But man, to me, hip hop music is so invigorating. It's like, individuals that came from the gutter, and from nothing, and just was able to spread their light and their word on their situations. And for me to be able to easily relate and either, man, be that go-getter, and or just to not conform to the patterns of this world, because that's, to me, is hip hop is so different and out there. And that's, what we need a little dose of in our life, is just, something different, not to be conformed to the patterns of this world. So that, to me, is, I can't name a particular song, because I love just all types of hip hop music. But when I'm working out, or when I'm, needing that boost of confidence, when I need to stick my chest up high, it's man, any good hip hop song will definitely put me in that zone.
Awesome. Last would be this. It would be, where do we find out more about you? We've got your website, ronnaulls.com. Is there a social media outlet that we can connect with you, learn from you, just see you there?
I'm on Instagram, Ron Naulls. I'm on Facebook, Ron Naulls. The beauty of my name is there's not too many people that have that last name, Naulls, like Beyonce, but with an N. So I'm on Twitter or X, but not as often, Ron Naulls as well. But I'm definitely active on Instagram, Ron Naulls, definitely active on Facebook, at Ron Naulls. And yeah, I'd love to hear from folks. I try to comment, reply all the time, because, man, I just love to engage with others that are, like me, just going on that path and that journey, and just, need to raise up their game.
Excellent. This has been amazing. Absolutely amazing. And a little extra question in here. I'm looking at it now on your Instagram account, and there's the website of it's like your law firm's got NaulsLegalGroup.com.
Yes.
Is that yours?
Yes. That is us.
Who might be the person that you serve, or the clientele that would come to you and might want your services?
Corporate clients. I've been in corporate for over 2 decades, as information technology professional, as a consultant, and as an attorney. And you can see, because of my background in being raided by the feds, being in corporate compliance is to me, is my bread and butter. But when it comes to cannabis compliance, or cannabis in the cannabis industry, that's definitely my niche. But corporate compliance, if any of your listeners need help with their business, I've helped businesses that had to report to the Securities Exchange Commission. I've had businesses that had to report on cybersecurity incidents and had to do free credit monitoring for affected individuals. We do it all when it comes to corporate compliance.
Fantastic. Ron, man, this has been edge of my seat. I cannot believe that time has flown by so rapidly, and I've had a number of tears that have been present, and I appreciate and love you for everything you shared, and for having to go through everything so you could be on this side of the equation, this side of the bars, literally, in a number of ways, to be able to share this story. And you really took a situation that was out of your control, and you made the most of it, and are serving people in a great way. And I want to honor you for that. Just thanks so much for being a guest on our show today, Ron. Thank you.
An honor, Matt. This is, to me, was, a blessing to be on this show. So thank you.